Thank you for listening to our podcast, Talking Out Cloud, the podcast where we discuss IT, clouds and insights and discuss highlights. I'm your host, Danny, and today we'll talk about LLM trends, use cases of generative AI, and Copilot. In a summary, we will touch upon the latest developments and trends in LLM, how AI is being adopted in our daily business, what's beyond chatbots, the history and background of Copilot, and many topics more. If you would like to understand how LLM behaves responsibly, then keep listening and learn what the most common pitfalls are. Please let me introduce our guest for today, Emile Verbund, a CSA at Microsoft. Emile is a cloud solutions architect at Microsoft, and in his daily business, he is responsible for the technical relationship between the customers and Microsoft. Thank you so much, Emile.
Thank you for having me, Danny. It's a pleasure that I can join on this podcast. For me, it's a first being in the studio, being in a podcast. So it's a great experience to discuss these kinds of topics with you and see if we can explore some of those cool things about LLMs and AI and all the new trends that are emerging. So thanks so much.
A pleasure. So you have definitely a passion about LLM. So let's start with some trends. So what are large language models and how are they working? What does it mean?
So I think a couple of years ago, we finally saw the emergence of ChatGPT, and it caught a lot of people off guard in a good way, where we now have a somewhat sentient algorithm that you can talk to and gives quite surprisingly good answers to a broad variety of topics. And this opened a new way of a new technology which we can utilize for our everyday kind of business. So these LLMs are just nothing more than just highly trained machine learning algorithms on a load of big chunks of data. And that's basically what an LLM is. And we at Microsoft, we're an investor of a partner of OpenAI. Mm-hmm. So we work closely together with the team at OpenAI, and we try to improve those LLMs and find ways that the people and businesses can start using it, find new use cases, create value, and not just ask questions on what kind of recipe should I be cooking tonight, but also can we create ways that we can leverage these technologies to make more meaningful impact. So that's a little bit what I do in day to day, work with a lot of software companies and see, okay, can we tap into your business model and transform? So I think that's very cool. Keeps me busy. There's a lot of questions on it. So the hype is still going strong on AI.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit how at least my introduction. Then to the question on what are LLMs. I think it's just a lot of people look at it from a chatbot point of view. I want to discuss that a little bit maybe further down the line. Okay, what can you do more with it?
Yeah.
I have a background in software engineering, so please do not ask me the questions on, okay, how do these transformers work with the attention heads and all those kinds of things. I know a little bit on the surface how it works, but that's just it. So I know how to implement them and work responsibly with those models.
Yeah. So just from my understanding, so if we're talking about large language models, how many are there?
There's a lot. So we have the big ones from OpenAI, and now recently we also saw DeepSeek, and we have the Anthropic models. There's Gemini from Google, and those are the biggest models with a lot of backing. Either there's a lot of the technical resources, a lot of smart people, but also a lot of private equity funding. But then you also have a lot of smaller models, which we call SLMs, small language models, or I would like to coin them as specific language models. Mm-hmm. And with Azure, we now are hosting about 1,800 different types of models, and they are increasing day by day. So these are smaller models trained on highly specific pieces of data. So they're very good at doing certain tasks. And for instance, we see there's now in the health space, there's developers, researchers. They're researching their own language models specifically for healthcare. because that's super nuanced. It's super specific, and a generic model does not always do the trick. So that's why there's a lot of different types of models coming out every single day, and we try to host every single one.
Yeah. So does the value with the large language model comes with the data that's being inserted?
Yes. So I think data is very important because and this is not something revolutionary or new, because you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So it's important that you do that you check which data you're using. Also, from a privacy endpoint, you have to be sure, can you use this kind of data to train your models? There's in Europe we have a lot of regulations on that part, so that's also very important to us. I understand that maybe some regions in the world might have different views, and there's still ongoing debates on what is in these models, and we're not 100% sure. So we still have some ground to cover. But when you have quality data, you will also get some more quality answers out of it. But still, these are generative models, and this means it works a little bit differently than machine learning models, because machine learning models are trained on data, and they are a little bit more deterministic. So you have accuracy there, where you have, for instance, you say, okay, my result is 99% accurate to my data set. With generative AI models, you do not have that certainty. So it's every single time you run the model, a unique, non-deterministic output is being generated. So you never really know if what you get out of it is 100% accurate. So it's very important that you take some steps and measures to ensure the accuracy and the quality of the outputs as well.
Gotcha. Yes, any specific use cases for this one? On how you actually control the system and get more precise data or precise output from the Gen AI?
Yes, definitely. So with LLMs, you insert a prompt, and then you get an output. So there's a couple of steps you can do to ensure that you get a good result. So one of these techniques that we call is prompt engineering, where you build your prompt and you use a couple of steps. So you can give the prompt a persona. That way the LLM starts to think as the persona you're passing it along. You can add your own data on top of it. So LLMs, they have a cutoff date. So they're trained, and then after that moment, they don't have any new data. And if you have proprietary data from your business, the model is not being trained on, then it will not know that data. So what you can do is you can grab your own data, you can inject it into the prompt, and then you can ask a question, and then the LLM suddenly understands it understands your data. And then you can do really cool stuff with it. So you can talk to your own data, for your customer data. But then that way you ensure that through prompt engineering, that you steer a little bit the output towards the input. But still, there's a risk that you get hallucinations where the output is not desirable, especially with the specifics and the details.
Sure.
Yeah. So then there's techniques like what we call prompt evaluations, prompt grounding, which are post-output processes, in which you determine, okay, is the output, does it deviate from an expected output? So in a way, your testing is when you let's say, for example, you have a question about an apple, but you get an answer about a pear. Well, that's not something that you want. So with some prompt grounding techniques, you could then check, okay, is this answer, this output, is it belonging to an apple or is it to a pear? If it's not an apple, then we cancel the process.
Yeah.
And then that way you can ensure that the output is as close to the truth as you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Are you also then limited to the question you actually asked in the prompt? So what I'm trying to say is, I can imagine that if you start this process, then you're training the model, but the training of the model goes with a specific angle, because you're looking for an answer or a specific data to be resolved, or actually get an output from. So are you also limited then with the question or the training you're doing with the model, or can you also like extend that to new insights which you couldn't have thought before?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Gotcha. So what I'm trying to say is, again, so you're training a model, and the training of the model goes with a specific angle on a topic. So let's say I have financial data. I would like to understand where are my biggest risks.
Yes.
So I'm starting to train the model with specific data. Let's say I'm in a healthcare company. So I'm just connecting it to all the, let's say, third parties and all the kind of invoice instances. And then I'm training this model with a specific mind that I would like to have all those risks. But maybe I'm just scoping or limiting the system and the training of the model. So that's the question towards my thought, because I'm looking for that specific answer.
Yeah.
So can you also like turn it around? Is it like, can you also get new insights and new meaningful insights from that specific model by not limiting or scoping it too much?
Yes, and you see that happen all the time. And I think that's also now with these kinds of techniques, there's a new way of interacting with software, where I think we had a huge SaaS boom the last couple of years, where every company was creating dashboards and had charts and all those kinds of things to understand and visualize data. And now the new programming language is actually English or Dutch or Swahili or German, whatever. So in a way, you can just ask any generic question of your data and try to get the LLM will figure out a way to get the answer that you want.
Yeah.
But it's always up to you to ensure that that answer is also also correct. And that's also a little bit difficult sometimes, but that's where I think my livelihood is, where that's right now what I'm doing a lot to ensure that we get the quality up to that standard.
Yeah. And then recently there was a new introduction about DeepSeek. You also mentioned it just before. So what's the difference then between this specific engagement towards your existing ones?
I think it's just super cool that DeepSeek has really shaken up the industry a bit. And I'm not sure if you have a stock portfolio or just follow the news, but
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. So that was like a black day for some people. But DeepSeek is a Chinese LLM, and it does the same as OpenAI, but it's much more cost effective. So what you see is now is really the war on who has the best product, but also the cheapest one. So who can democratize it the most, scale it out as easy. That's really in full on effect right now.
Yeah.
So DeepSeek was developed by a Chinese company, and it was actually a side project for a huge quantitative trading hedge fund in China. So it wasn't even their full-on job. They just did it as a side project. And they found a way to do it more efficient. So they were able to develop this same capability model for like 95% of the cost. So that's so that makes it's now really everybody's able to start using it, and costs are less of an obstruction these days. Yeah. So that's super cool to see.
But it's even accurate, same way of engagement.
Yes, yeah. It's very accurate. It always comes. It's from China, so then people are a little bit hesitant. But the people at DeepSeek fully open sourced the model.
Yeah.
They even open sourced the weights behind it. They did not open source the data, which it was trained on. But it's a fully open source model, so nothing is stopping you from running it in your own data center on your own PC. So there's no access to the Chinese government or to the American government. You can restrict all the access like you would do with a normal VM as well.
Yeah, interesting. So competition is growing.
Yes.
So what's then the vision of Microsoft on specifically Copilot or ChatGPT or let's say Gen AI in general?
We are. It's actually funny. So I joined a little over 2 years ago. I joined Microsoft, and I was a software engineer. Was working on these big cloud platforms and doing the traditional software engineering stuff. So I joined to help Microsoft and the customers on that part. And then out of nowhere, we saw this ChatGPT come out of nowhere, and now Microsoft is really transforming into an AI first company. So everything is AI right now. And the cool thing is that I'm not a data scientist or a machine learning expert, but the thing about these large language models is now it's really a developer play. So developers can use it really well. And this is why a lot of us are transitioning to, okay, can we optimize our customers to start using these kinds of technologies? We have built our own Copilot, which helps to assist you in your meetings. I'm not sure if you have Teams or use Google Meet. Yeah, and if you have Copilot in Teams as well.
Yeah.
I think that's like the best Copilot because it transcribes your entire conversation. You can ask questions. I sometimes ask, hey, did I forget to ask some questions? There's some follow-up. What's the action points?
Yeah.
And these things are super cool, but it's also built by software engineers. And it's using these new technologies, these new AI models. And I think it's just very cool to also inspire other companies, especially SaaS companies. Hey, start building your own Copilots. Don't just use the Copilots out of the box, but start building your own and see it as a way that you can also create an upsell. Find a revenue stream that you can create this meaningful extra assistant for your own customers. So not just looking at the SaaS company, but one step further.
Yeah. So then you're looking into what's the value for the end user, obviously. So how does that work from a business perspective then? Is Microsoft just providing this Copilot for ISVs? Or is it something they need to develop by themselves? Or is it just like the LLM we just discussed they can use? Or how does that work?
So I think the easiest way is buy the Copilot from Microsoft. But then you use it in the Microsoft stack. And that works well. Some do better than others. But I think the real value is if you start seeing that, hey, if Microsoft can build this, why can't we? And you have the domain knowledge as a company, as a developer or as a product manager. You can see where the actual value is. So maybe if we go back to this to the healthcare industry, doctors, they have the worst handwriting, right?
Yeah, I do as well.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm not a doctor.
Maybe your kids as well. But then, if you can then upload that handwriting and you can extract what's there, maybe your doctor has prescribed you paracetamol, and then you just upload this. A LLM is able to decipher let's hope they can decipher. Maybe you're not that advanced for doctors, but let's say they do.
Gotcha.
And then it can automatically put an order to a pharmacy and make sure that the prescription is ready. And these are possibilities that you now can do with these technologies, because it's all about unstructured data and getting data out of it as well. So that's a way that you, as a company, you can create a Copilot for a certain niche that helps doctors or it helps patients. So also try to think a couple of steps ahead and not just, hey, this is a cool chatbot. We can discuss the chatbot and see where have some conversations with some AI, but then nothing really comes out of it. Yeah.
So, and then from your role, are you supporting the companies and your customers then with this kind of adoption and the training it comes along with it?
Yes. Yeah. So we do ideation sessions where we really go into depth into the business model of the company. So we determine, okay, what kind of industry are they in? What kind of data? What kind of regulations do they have? We try to figure out what the technology stack is, and then try to find, okay, well, can we think of new ways that we can create revenue? So at the moment, working together with a company, and we're building a system that is able to get risks and controls out of regulations. And their entire software is based on providing a framework for other companies to do this. But now with these technologies, they can get those kinds of data in scale within minutes, rather than having to hire to get some consultants, which have to be working for some months to get all the data in. Yeah. So these are really new revolutionary ways that we're also trying to be actively thinking with our customers. Okay, how can we create new revenue streams for you?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. And then, do you have any specific use cases in regards to Gen AI to which you're proud of?
Use cases to Gen AI which we're proud of?
Yeah.
I think there's a couple, but I wouldn't say me specifically, but as an industry as a whole, there's a lot. So one of the things is I have a friend who works at the NKY, and that's the Dutch Cancer Institute, and they're using this technology to do genome sequencing. So this is not a large language model, but they're using generative AI to map the DNA structure. Yeah. And that way they can do predictions if someone has a higher chance to get a certain type of cancer. And that is also the same technology that was invented a couple of years ago that is also these large language models are using, but now we're also seeing it with genome structures because there's also so much data points in genomes. So I think those are very cool new developments.
Interesting, definitely. Yeah, and do you have any other use cases? Because obviously we came from the chatbots, and then we discussed what else. So this is really interesting. So what else could our listeners look into? Like, oh, this is interesting for me.
Yeah, so I think very actionable is. My colleagues always say ChatGPT was like a blessing and a curse because these new technologies, as I mentioned, you can do genome structuring and sequencing, but you can do chatbotting. But for ChatGPT, everybody thinks these models are just for chatbots, and it's a cool use case. Definitely a lot of value to explore, but also there's a not different use case to it, which I think is much more valuable, and that is actually data extraction. So these models are able to get structured data out of large pieces of text, out of PDFs or words or even pictures. You can get JSON outputs, you can get just structured data, and that structured data can then be used by your BI team or for whatever. So out of nowhere, if you have lots of PDFs or you have publicly available data, you can then use that, combine it. So it's a new way of extracting data and then use the data in traditional operations to find out the intelligence that you need.
Interesting, yeah. What are your thoughts about, because in the last episode we discussed about this one as well. So we had it about, one of the use case would be that I have my consultants and they need to they have an appointment with an end customer, and then they're selling an opportunity or they're close to the deal. And then they need to block some time and maybe cancel notification, etc. So there was kind of a chain of reactions which we can use from Gen AI and also from the different kind of agents available. Can you share your opinion about how agents should collaborate and how you think that will be definitely a valuable use case for end customers?
Yeah, okay. Agents are the next big thing. So you are following the trends. Agents are in essence how can I best describe this? They're some personas. And an agent could be a recruiter or an HR professional or even a CEO or a podcast host, for instance. And that those agents they behave in a certain way, and they're all powered by Gen AI. And agents can have certain skill sets. So a recruiter is able to get CVs and scan through them. An HR professional might be able to see, okay, how much budget do we have for this person that we can offer a salary? And these agents, they can interact with each other, and it can be sequential. Yeah. So where you define the sequence, so you say, okay, first it's the recruiter is going to do assessment on the CV, then we're going to go to HR, and then we're going to go to schedule a meeting for the candidate. Yeah. But there's also multiple techniques where you have, we call this big agent chat rooms. And it's still very experimental, but then you just put all the agents into a big WhatsApp group and they start talking with each other. And then one agent says, hey, maybe I need this. And then the other agent says, hey, I can do that. Let me just do it for you. And I give you the answer back. And then you get this huge conversation of agents and they start working autonomously from each other. So in that way, you as a company only have to define some kind of agents and you give them a task and then you get a result. So I think this is where we're heading to. It's still very experimental, but there's a lot of progress being made right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you think it actually has a value to the end customers, or?
It's with all technology and all advancements. It's very iterative. So we start with this, and it seems very futuristic, but then we learn from it, and we start to improve. It can be very, very valuable. So, but if you look where we came from, nobody wanted to use a mobile phone back in the 1990s, and now you're here and talking about AI agents. So, who knows where we're going?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, and then how can we monetize this whole trend, and also working with Gen AI?
Yeah.
So how do you keep control of your costs?
And then you mean as a Microsoft, or as you as a person,
I would say me as a person.
Yeah, as a SaaS company or something.
Yes.
Yeah. I think monetizing the costs is it's a very valid point, because it can get quite expensive. So always try to think of margins and discuss with the vendors. So with Anthropic, with OpenAI, with Microsoft, you can discuss the cost and see if there's things possible. But in the end, it's always about the end customer value. And if you provide end customer value, then you will find margin. And I think that's also always the case. There was also the case when SaaS companies were starting and ramping up. There was also a question: how do you make your margin? Where does it come from? There's always costs. So if you find a good fit, let's say, for instance, you find a way that you are able to go through CVs and that a recruiter doesn't have to do it, that means a recruiter has more time to do something else.
Yeah.
And can focus on the important ones, and doesn't have to filter out hundreds of applicants. Because I know also that this goes the other way around, that a lot of applicants are now using generative AI to send in CVs. And I'm not sure if you go through CVs from time to time, but when I sometimes check LinkedIn, there's 1,000+ applicants for every role opening.
Yeah.
Just imagine you being a recruiter and you have to go through those manually. It's also it goes both ways. So when you find a solution for these kinds of problems, where you have lots of unstructured data and you can go through them scalable, then end users will probably see value, and then there's some margin for everybody there.
Yeah, exactly. So probably new business models will raise.
Yes, for sure. And that's really the thing that I have to keep repeating. It's not about creating a chatbot. It's about finding ways that you can get structured data that you can already use in your current applications from unstructured data. So if you have an application, but you can enrich it, it's just mapping some PDF, some Word file to your database, and you don't have to change anything anymore. It's just putting something in between. And that's where real value is right now, very actionable. Interesting.
Yeah. And you see a lot of customers looking into this as well?
Yeah, more and more and more. Yeah. So there's, as I mentioned, with the rules and regulations, working with some others as well. In the healthcare, there's a lot being done, because the healthcare is just one big mess with data. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's very traditional. I used to work at a company, and then I heard that exchange of data of patients between hospitals is still being done with the fax.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot to be improved there. And if you can get some way that you can extract data and put it already into the systems, it saves doctors a lot of time. And it's also we have to think of those use cases a bit to help those people focus on what they want to do.
Yeah.
AI is not going to take jobs, but it's going to make sure that you have more time to do what is valuable. There's less static noise.
Yeah, exactly. So I mentioned last time as well. So it improves the productivity, and innovation. So I agree with you. It just helps people to focus on the core business, and just takes away. It supports with edge technologies.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Definitely.
So let's move forward to Copilot.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're working at Microsoft. So what is Copilot? Where did it came from? What can we expect from it?
Yes, so everything I just explained is basically our Copilot,
gotcha.
But then for Microsoft.
Yeah.
So Copilot is a tool which integrates with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and it's a interface where you can talk with natural language to these applications. So, for instance, when you have a large Excel table, you can ask questions. Hey, can you maybe give me some data in that year from that month for those customers under that amount of, I don't know, money, whatever. And then it starts to build a query for you. So you don't have to build those formulas yourself or create a table that does this and this or a chart. So that's a way that we try to create an application that you don't have to be a coder anymore. Mm-hmm. So we really see that like English is the new programming language, that everybody can just write code with English, and there's a Copilot in between that does the actual translation between English to the code and what's possible and what isn't. And so for teams, you've used it as well, where you ask questions on what's been said, what the summary of the meeting was. You can probably use a Copilot for this podcast and see, okay, how much was Emil talking, how much was Danny talking. So those kind of things. That's Copilot, yeah.
Gotcha. So why do you think this is the next big thing then? Because you mentioned, again, so productivity, I hear you. Yeah. Does it also like reveals new things which were missing when we're having, let's say, this discussion, or when I'm having a Teams meeting with my team? Does it reveal new things?
It doesn't really reveal new things, but I think you can find new things. So if you work in a company and you have a lot of company data, you don't want that data to be accessible outside of your company. So when you have ChatGPT, that's in Europe, that's a compliance risk, mm-hmm. because the data will get used to retrain the model. So with Copilot, it's fully compliant, and you're able to search through your company information. You can ask questions about documents in a fully compliant way. So that's a way that you can find new ways to find data of your company as an employee or someone who works there. Yeah.
And then I had the same discussion in the last episode as well. And then Joe mentioned that aren't people getting lazy by using Copilot?
I don't know. Do they think they're getting lazy?
No, I guess it's just a question, right? Because I can imagine again. So normally you would have the administrator who taking notes during a team meeting and giving a summary maybe to the team and afterwards. So I guess there could be a case of getting lazy, and because again, from the other angle, you're more productive because you don't have to need to focus on actually administration, taking notes. At the same time, you can do different maybe things. So that's I guess it's a good thing. But also, I think it changed the mind and the mindset during the meeting. So maybe you pay less attention, right? Because now I'm in this situation where I don't need to pay attention. Just wait for the summary and then see. Oh, we discussed this. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's quite. I recognize that a little bit, but I wouldn't say it's lazy in a way. It also allows me to focus more from time to time. So yes, I do sometimes have meetings where I should not be, but then there's like 5 things that are being said that I should know. But it should not take an hour. With Copilot, I can maybe ask, okay, hey, I don't attend the meeting, and ask what was being said. Can you give a summary? And then I still know what was being said. Is that lazy? Maybe a little bit. Is there something wrong with being lazy? I don't know. It's also, I think, in the human body and mind to not put so much effort into everything. So I don't think being lazy is bad per se. But you also have to be responsible. Exactly. Because if you're lazy and you're cutting corners and you say, okay, the quality, I just 100% believe what Copilot says and I'm not going to double check, that's lazy, and that's not the good kind of lazy. But if you are able to still get the quality that you need to get out there with less effort, why not? Yeah.
Interesting. So what else? Can you mention maybe 2 other things that would be really interesting for our listeners to look into? So for example, now we did the summary of a Teams meeting. Mm-hmm. So what else is really interesting to look into?
So for me, I'm working a lot on the Azure side of things, mm-hmm. in the cloud part. So I think one of the cool things is, I think that's called semantic kernel. It's very, very technical, but it's that's a tool to orchestrate large language models and code. So when you start using these kinds of tools, you can then execute code via natural language. So that's super, super cool. So when you start doing it, this has also been developed to build our Copilots. And we've open sourced that. And it's cloud agnostic, it's model agnostic. So it doesn't really matter what kind of model or cloud you run it on. But it's a way that you want maybe to create your own Copilot like we discussed earlier, then semantic kernel is definitely something to take a look at. So that's super cool. Yeah.
You can share another one?
Another one, yeah. Are you thinking of a specific one?
Not really. No, just curious to see.
I think just so much, and also not just in LLM space, but also just Azure in general. For the Copilots, I like that I can just when I have a presentation I need to do, just instrument my Copilot to just give me a rough draft of a presentation, and then I can just tune it a little bit. Saves me a lot of time. I don't have to build my own slides anymore. I do have to update them a bit because that's again the question on do I want the quality or am I lazy? So then, but it's still it removes that writer's block from me.
No, I fully agree. So we had the same discussion, and I think that's useful, very useful, because it just helps you to get up to speed. It gives you a kind of a pattern to which you can use move forward from, and it just again helps you to be up to speed. So I agree with that. Yeah.
And then if I can do a third, because
Definitely.
It just pops up now, is the agent part, the Copilot agents. So lots of new announcements are coming regarding the Copilot agents, and that you can build your own agents and try to emulate all those different behaviors that I just mentioned. So Copilot agents are going to be also very cool. There's also going to be Copilot extensions, and these are also going to be able to distribute to your customers. So it's also for other companies, if you build your own Copilot extensions and agents, you can also monetize on those because they just integrate natively in Teams, in whatever. So that's also very cool.
Yeah, that sounds great. Nice. I'm looking forward to it. Makes my life easier. So let's go to the last bit. So how do we keep LLM behave responsibly? That's a very good question. Because you have to see like LLM is also sometimes a little kid. You mentioned you had kids. How old are they? 6 and 9.
6 and 9. Yeah. So they can ask a lot of questions, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah, and then you have to be careful what kind of answer you give, or.
Depends, of course, on the topic, but definitely yes. Yeah.
So I think you have to be think of an LLM also like a little kid. It can just say anything, and you have to make sure that you don't want your little kid to start saying stuff that you maybe you discuss something with your wife, your kid picked it up and is then saying it. You don't want that to be said, so you have to be careful. And there's ways that we can help. So we have a lot of evaluation frameworks, and with these evaluation frameworks, you can then say, okay, well, maybe we don't want it to be discussing certain topics, or it has to be about apples or pears, depending on what we determine it to be important at that point in time. You also have to be aware, from a responsible point of view, can you be jailbreaked? So when you are implementing an LLM and use it as a chatbot, and then people know that it's an LLM as a chatbot, they might try to gaslight it into saying what you want it to say. So then you have to be careful and make sure that you use the right techniques and the right tools to ensure that this does not happen. So there was this, I think a year ago, there was this company that had a chatbot on their webpage, and I think it was a big airline. And someone found out it was a LLM and started using prompt hacking techniques. And then he got a 50% discount. And then the company said, no, this is AI. The discount does not count. It went to the judge, and it went to court, and the judge ruled, no, it's actually a representative of you, and you have to give the 50% discount to the flight. So with these kinds of things, it's more than just responsibility of what's the output, but also how you interact with it. And we try to help everybody with getting that message out. But it's can be scary, but it's also quite easy to fix.
Yeah, and then, so what do you think? So are there any specific places we should go to actually become responsible in using then these LLM techniques? Or is it some was it normal thinking to actually engage with it? Or where should listeners start?
Yeah, where would you start? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So what I'm trying to do most of the time is just using, let's say, knowledgeable engagements with Gen AI, then asking the questions more broadly, so not too scoped, because I'm always looking for more answers, and then starting to narrow it down into what I'm actually looking for. Yeah, so I guess that's my approach.
Yeah.
But at the same time, right? So I can't. Probably there are many people out there, so not all of them are knowledgeable, maybe, or have a different kind of engagement or angles using systems, right? Because obviously we see we heard the stories that let's say a bank employee is calling out and then just providing the passwords to them.
Yeah.
So I guess, right, what I'm trying to say with knowledgeable is that not everybody just like understands what's the real business case, who's the person, and what's the risk behind. So I guess that's kind of my approach. But again, so I can expect that everybody hasn't this kind of approaches. So then I would ask the question like, what's like the starting point, or is there any material or guidelines we can use?
There's a lot, and also it's a lot of it's on uncharted territory as well. So we're all in this together, and when was ChatGPT launched? Just somewhere
I would say
2021 something, 22. So it's still very fresh, and it got the world by surprise, and now we're all trying to figure out, okay, where are we going? You have all these big tech companies that are trying to dictate where do we want to go. I mean, Microsoft, we have our vision, but Google has their vision, Amazon has their vision, and there's lots of other companies that have vision, but what's the right vision? So where do you start? Where do you want to go to? I think we all have to figure that out along the way. And the EU is also trying to, get a step in the right direction by having legislation and making sure it's transparent and it works for people and not against people. So those are all good steps that we're taking. But what are the guidelines right now? We only know what we have right now. So if you have very concrete questions, there's a lot to find. You can always reach out to Microsoft, and then we can try to help. But it's very case by case. So there's not a definitive answer. Hey, you have to do A, B, C, D. Gotcha. Maybe with cloud computing and software engineering, it's much more simple, where you create your DevOps pipelines, and then you run unit tests, and then you do integration tests, and then it should work. Here because the nature of it's so non-deterministic. You never really know what you're doing and how you should tackle it. So. Yeah.
All right, valid. And otherwise, I could always ask Copilot, of course.
Yeah, you can always ask. Yeah.
Help me out here.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is there anything else you would like to share with the listeners?
Other than just repeating the message, think about end customer value. Think of it, these LLMs, as a new way to get structured data out of unstructured data. That really opens up a lot of business opportunity. And we really try to get that message out. We see it all the time, and people don't realize it enough, that if you have a lot of data, start using it and just create from the data that you have, create structured data into what you can already work with. And you can see already it's really going to create new business potential. So we don't have the domain knowledge, so we just want to support, but think of it. I think that's the key message that I want to get across.
Awesome. Yeah. So to our listeners, get out there.
Yes.
Move forward.
Start experimenting.
Things. Exactly.
Yeah. Start experimenting. Fail fast, and just try these kinds of things. Yeah.
Thanks. It was a pleasure having you here with me, Emil. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure was all mine.
With this, we came to an end. So in the next episodes, we will discuss something about cost management and best practices. We'll also have some episodes more about security and use cases. So please check out our socials to understand what episode is next. Thank you for listening, and hope to listen and hear to you soon. Thanks. Bye.